A lot of farmers have told me that they haven't seen garter snakes in years. We got them everywhere. Look at that little fella. He was probably born this year. Sorry, dog. I don't suppose I don't need these on. So let's talk about my lessons learned, my observations from grazing school. Got a hole in my lip. So the first thing I'll say about grazing school is there wasn't, I would say 80% of it was a rehash of things that I had read or practiced already. And so I would say half the benefit came from the 20% ideas that I heard while I was in the instruction or just talking to other farmers. And then the other part of the benefit was just meeting some people that I found truly fascinating, the ways they were looking at their farm and their business. You know, how and hearing people's different plans based at different stages of where they were. So I'll just kind of go through first lessons I learned or observations I took in the back of my breeding book. From instruction. So one of the things I wrote down ahead of time, and I was expecting like a prescribed answer, was how to deal with thistles, because it's been the bane of my existence the last couple of years. We don't have a weed manager in our county, or if they do, they're sitting in their office doing nothing. And so I'm constantly getting thistle duff blown in off of inactive fields or wet meadows or other junk like that. And so I was saying, how do I deal with this? Give me an answer. And the answer I got was a bit of a challenge in a good way. And they said, manage for the things you'd like instead of the things you wouldn't like, as a way of, and it's a paradigm shift for me, away from trying to kill what I don't want, and instead trying to encourage the things I do want, and to disregard those weeds that I find a pest. Most weeds I do not find a pest because I have sheep, and sheep love most weeds. But thistle is a tough one. So it did sort of affirm my plan for this winter. I have one field that's pretty tough with thistles off the neighbor's farm, and I mowed it real hard, and then I placed about 80 bales around that field with the idea that I'm going to shock it with manure and thatch and carbon and grass seed, and just really hope that the grass that is there and the grass seed that I put down can outcompete the thistles that are there. So that mentality shift of manage for the things you want instead of the things you don't want has really been kicking around in my head for a lot of different aspects of life. So that's interesting. The other one that I thought was a really good one was I sat down and I talked to Isaac Tappenden a couple of times, but at length one time, and I said, look, I can't really get a good pulse on what you guys do with ram lambs that aren't worthy of being seed stock. And he gave me he said, don't even cut them. It's a waste of effort and time, and it basically rules out any ethnic market. Like we have a strong Somali population in Minneapolis, and same with the Hmong communities. And as far as I understand it, they won't take castrated or docked, not that I dock tails, but they won't take anything but intact lambs. And so I'm really ruling out a whole sector of business that I could be doing with with those people by castrating everything. It's going to take some different management for certain, because now I got to deal with 50 or 60 or 70 ram lambs within earshot sometimes of my main flock. So I'm kind of concerned about taking that risk, but we'll see. Um, the other thing that I was really challenged on was I asked directly. I said, "What constitutes a diverse sward?" You know, because if you look at the grass behind me, I can count about 3 or 4 kinds of grass and at least 2 or 3 kinds of legumes. Hey, Bob. And I thought I was doing pretty good. And Kent Solberg up there said 25. So that's a hell of a challenge. That means that I got a long way to go with different fields. You know, to really create what would be called healthy diversity inside grazing fields. I think my fields are more reflective of typical pasture or hay mix, where they got a couple of legumes and about 3 to 5 grasses, which is fine, but I got some work to do. Yeah, so that was kind of it from the lecture as far as what to do. I thought I would learn more about drought management, but it ended up being pretty common sense stuff, like slow down, give more rest, and if you can't do it, sell animals, which is what I would call common sense instead of trying to feed your way out of the problem. I'm actually taking advantage of that with some animal purchases, meaning I have an opportunity to buy in more animals this fall because we have this. I mean, look at this. This grass is maybe 2.5 feet high. We got tons of mature alfalfa, which is great. Some clover. I mean, this is what my farm looks like right now because my stocking rate is right, even for these dry years. And so I get to take advantage of that by being able to buy in more animals when other folks are looking to offload because they're out of grass. Doug and I are piecing together a cow herd right now, and so while the cattle prices are high, we've been able to find a few reasonable, I wouldn't call them deals, but reasonable places to buy animals because we're buying and a lot of people are selling. The other one too that I would say, I got to meet Jordan Meyer down from Caledonia, and he's every bit as thoughtful as I thought he would be, and his perspective around the economics of farm with custom grazing and hiring out a custom herd of those goats. Not that I want to do goats, mind you, but it was a fascinating way to look at farming that I hadn't really. I've always been in you produce something and you sell it, but really your resource that you're selling via animals is your ground and your grass. And so you know, I've been kicking around the idea of trying to find someone who needs who doesn't want to manage their cattle in the winter, and they bring on their load of hay to my farm, and I'll take advantage of their manure and their hay thatch and unroll hay to improve my ground, and I'll get paid to do it. I mean, that sounds like a slick deal to me. So it was great to talk to Jordan and finally get to meet him. And I know I mentioned this on the last video, but I'll say the last thing was, in the face of tremendous drought and, really hard ground to grow on up there up north, it basically looked like a beach with some grass growing out of it. George Heller's cattle challenged my perception of what good cattle are. The fact that they could look so right and so slick and so perfect on what I'm certain my cattle would be starving on has really mentally challenged me to up my game. I'm very content with where my sheep are, but my cattle are pretty middling, and I'm taking some steps when we're buying cattle this fall to buy like just top bill ones. It's just unbelievable how good his cattle looked. I didn't even hear the lecture when we were out there. I was just staring at them. They're so fat and slick and low with short legs. I mean, they're just perfect. They're just right. And so it really told me, I mean, he didn't say anything. He was very gracious about it, but it showed me that I can do a better job with cattle selection. So we're going to do a better job. Anyway, the last thing that was a real benefit is I got to meet all sorts of people that I had kind of chatted with online a little bit. A few of you follow this channel, so it was like nice to talk to Joe, and I think your wife's name is Nikki. Forgive me. Down in the driftless, it's like southwestern Wisconsin, southeastern Minnesota, and talk sheep with them. I got to talk sheep with Guy from Canada, and pick his brain about private marketing on turkey and the cost-benefit analysis of wool versus hair sheep. So nothing that really changed my mind, but it just, I definitely realized I've gotten into a funnel where there's more than one way to skin this cat as far as how to farm and do it appropriately for the land and make some money at it. And I thought that was great. So, yeah, so the different people I got to meet at this thing were tremendous. Even though I probably wasn't always as gracious or nice as I ought to have been, I tried my best. But anyhow, I'm going to drink this drink and sit out in my America lawn chair and watch the sun go down sitting in my sheep flock. Have a good evening.